Welcome to Climify, the podcast that connects climate scientists and design educators together so that we can help combat our climate crisis in our classrooms. The discussions on this program are geared to help you climify your syllabi to assign projects that not only teach design fundamentals, but also can have a positive impact on our climate.
This episode is brought to you by Renourish. Renourish is your one-stop online resource for sustainable design and systems thinking strategies and tools for the graphic designer. You can learn more about Renourish on their website at re-nourish.org, or you can follow them on Twitter and Facebook at Renourish.
Welcome to another episode of Climify. I'm Eric Benson, your host this season, as we explore why climate action is lacking in design education and what we can do to help change that. I talk with climate experts from all over the world to help us design educators fight the climate crisis in our classrooms. We could, with a little extra help, graduate a new generation of climate designers who can help make the world a better place for all of us. Sounds crazy, right? How could good typography on a poster or choice of hemp fabric on a shoe make any impact on our climate? The European Commission found that 80% of all the environmental impact happens in the design stage of a project. Furthermore, manufacturing of what we make is the third largest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. Our abilities to educate about these issues, strategize more responsible outcomes, and influence climate action is vital for the future of our planet. And it all starts in the classroom. I'm also a design educator. I've been teaching and researching sustainable design for 15 years here at the University of Illinois. I quit my corporate career in 2004 to dedicate the rest of my life to solving our climate crisis. So thanks for joining me on this journey to graduate a new generation of climate designers. You can get involved beyond this program at climatedesigners.org/edu. On this episode, I'm talking with Raz Godelnik. Raz is an assistant professor of strategic design and management at Parsons School of Design, the New School in New York, where he explores sustainable business models and how companies can respond effectively to the climate crisis. Currently, he also serves as an associate director for the BBA Strategic Design and Management program. His new book, Rethinking Corporate Sustainability in the Era of Climate Crisis, A Strategic Design Approach, has just been published by Palgrave Macmillan. All right, Raz, it's wonderful to meet you. We've had a prior conversation, so it's not the first time that we've talked, but I'm glad that you're back and excited to hear what you have to say today. I want to get started, though, with some basic background about who you are. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Thank you so much, Eric. I'm very happy to be here. A big fan of the podcast.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so I'm an assistant professor of strategic design and management at Parsons School of Design, which is part of the New School in New York. I've been part of Parsons for the last 7 or 8 years. Overall, my work is mainly within, my corner, as I call it, within Parsons is really the field of strategic design and management. And right now I'm also the associate director of the BBA program in strategic design and management. So that's just for the introductory level. That's what I do.
I've had a couple of actual listeners ask me to dive deeper into some of the terms we use on this show. So I'm interested to know about strategic design and how you would define that. I have my own definition of it, but I don't know if I'm way off base here or what. So can you give me more like how you would define strategic design?
Yeah, maybe I maybe I'll use a metaphor to help explain it, and that is actually one that is been created by Dan Hill. So I'm going to steal it from him. And basically, what then suggests is that strategic design is somewhat similar to dark matter, right?
Ah,
So we have matter and we have dark matter, and as designers, we usually look at the matter, and the matter itself could be um, a product or service or any type of solution that we create, that we design. Strategic design or strategic designers look at the dark matter. This is the part that is invisible, right? But dark matter is still it's 83% of the in total, right? And it's very critical to the creation of the matter. So what we are looking at is not just at that final delivery, right? But also we look at the everything that unseen, but nevertheless is critical for its
mhm.
creation. So it could be about organizational culture. It could be about social norms, about regulatory environment. It could be about a different number of elements that are really critical in informing eventually, right, the creation, right, of the final product or service or whatever we're looking at. So that type of holistic approach is, I think, what we are trying to bring to everything that we do. And overall, for us, really, the focus is really, I mean, we consider ourselves to be, industry agnostic. So our alumni could be found in almost every industry, also working in NGOs and so forth. But they have this I think one thing that is common to all of them, right? The idea of really bringing the strategic design into the work is really that type of holistic and systemic approach that is really looking not just at, at the level of what you see in front of you, but really digs very deep all the way to if we think in terms of the iceberg model, or I'm using another metaphor, right?
Yeah.
To think about mental models. So
Yeah.
this is hopefully that helps just to give a vision of what how we approach strategic design.
Yeah, I like the dark matter metaphor. I love any science metaphor that we can use. And because for this show, we're looking at bringing climate science into the classroom. So I'm also thinking about what you said, and it reminds me a lot about how people define systems thinking, right? That there are some these unseen connections that you have to reveal for, I guess in your case, to get to that right strategy. And it makes sense that your alumni are all over the place because everyone needs strategy. Everyone needs to figure this out, no matter what field they're in. What's been the most exciting part about doing that work for you?
Well, for me, I think one thing it's the engagement with the students. We have super smart students coming really from different backgrounds, and I think for me it's really about it brings some of the key challenges, right, that we're looking at, and in a way it also challenges me to think in new ways about these issues, right? So it's about for example, we're in New York City, but our students are coming from all over the world, right?
Right.
So it's thinking, it's always reminding, I mean, being with students from all over the world, right? Uh, Both from, the global north and the global south, it keeps reminding me and pushes me to think at that global level, right? It's not just, how about, we think about what do we do to, to improve whatever we try to look at in New York or in the US, but really how do we think of it from a more global perspective? So that's for me one thing, and the other thing is really also, I mean, we have students that are not afraid of asking difficult questions, and I think that's always great when it comes really to push the envelope to make sure that You keep thinking about how can I, in my own work, right? How can I approach things differently? How can I think about them in different ways, use different lenses, and so forth.
Yeah, I remember when I was in graduate school, that was the one of the main things that the faculty wanted me to do is keep asking us questions, to ask tough questions. And towards when I was graduating, I said, I'm gonna, my research was all into sustainability, and I said, I'm gonna bring this back to corporate America, where I came from. That's where my background was. And I remember my first job interview. I was still in grad school, and I asked like 3 or 4 questions after they asked me the first question. And the person obviously didn't look at my resume before I applied, but he said, you have a graduate degree, right? You asked too many questions. And that's when I realized maybe I need to find another avenue for my future here. If I'm going to get in trouble at my job for asking questions, that's not a good thing.
No, you're right. And I mean, in a sense, right, one thing that I always tell the students is that from my perspective, design and strategic design in particular, it's about, how do we ask better questions, right? I'm not sure if we could necessarily think about right questions, but how do we ask better questions? And this is also what I try to do with, my own work again, which is very much looking at sustainability, especially in the context of business.
Well, let's talk about your own work. Let's talk about sustainability. Let's talk about design and business. How did you get into that? A lot of people I talk with have that are working in that field, including myself. Something triggers them. They read something, they watch something, they see something. What brought you into this world of sustainability?
Yeah, I mean, I don't, well, I don't have really a great story. I didn't have any aha moment, but I mean, I was,
Every story is worthwhile, though, right?
yeah, I hope so. Well, I think that, from my journey, it was more structured as a more traditional business journey. I studied economics and communications in my undergraduate studies, and then and moved to MBA studies. And overall, I was pretty, content with what I did. I worked as an economist, and then I worked in high tech and in business development, and it seemed all good. But then I had, and this is more than 20 years ago, and I grew up in Israel, so this was back there, and I had the chance to take a position in the government, and I started working on issues that are more people oriented, and are looking into really how to support many humanitarian issues that required some more careful attention, and that was what I was hired for. And anyway, for me, it got me to think about, how can I make more impact in my work. And at the same time, I also started, getting more interested in sustainability issues. Back then, at the end of the 90s, so there wasn't, one thing or one book. I think that this was more a process. So getting more interested in really and involved in work that actually, helps people, and getting more interested in environmental challenges brought me to, to take a step backward and say to myself, okay, I want to make sure, that whatever I do with my life, it's actually, I'm creating an impact or greater impact that I would have, working just with numbers. And so this led me to starting a journey that continues to this day, where basically I'm trying to, one thing that has led me from the get-go was figuring out, how do we make sustainability work? And that's a question that I still struggle with. And so I started as an entrepreneur, actually, bringing together my uh, growing passion to sustainability and also my business skills. And I founded a startup in eco fashion.
Oh, wow, I
And
didn't know that.
yeah, that was, it was about, the goal was to produce fashionable jeans that are made of hemp. I'm a big hemp fan,
Me
and
too.
yeah, and so back then it was really difficult to find really, I mean, good, high quality jeans that are also made from hemp. It's still difficult today, but 15 years ago it was even harder, and so that was the goal. Eventually, it didn't work that well. I mean, the timing wasn't right, and I moved to starting another startup, Ecolibris, that worked in the publishing industry to try and figure how to make books more sustainable. And we worked with publishers and bookstores and so forth.
What year
And that
was that? What year was that startup? Because I know I reached out to that group when I was, I don't know what year it was, but I have been aware of them. I guess it was you. I
well,
didn't realize that's wild. When was that startup?
yeah, that was about 12 years ago or so. We started.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
and it could. I mean, we worked with many people, and the idea was really back then to increase the awareness. We had also tree planting programs
Oh
around the
man.
world, and we encourage people to plant a tree for every book
Yep.
you publish, read. And at the same time work with trying to get a better understanding how to improve the production processes and so forth. So yeah, this was very exciting, and I love reading as well. So
Yeah, no, that was I definitely knew about this because there were people at my university that were like, "Have you heard of this? This is a cool because now I don't feel bad publishing all these papers and writing my book now because I can attach myself to this." Or and I remember, I don't think I actually reached out, but I remember doing a lot of like homework on it, going, "Okay, how do I do this?" And it actually, I learned a bunch from it. So that's wild. It's like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. We were
right.
connected and we didn't even know about it, I guess.
That's funny. Yeah, that's great. So yeah, then we were secretly connected.
Yes.
But yeah,
Finally.
no, that's great. So I mean, to make a long story short, I started getting more interested in, again, how do we make sustainability work, and got into more research and writing. I started writing for different outlets, newspapers, and digital outlets, and getting more and more involved into it. I got into, and then I got also into teaching, first at the University of Delaware, and then CUNY, and then also eventually at Parsons. And there, I mean, as part of the process, I started, off getting more into again, talking about the dark matter, right? Digging deeper. I started, I found the really the value of using design tools and design thinking to help, you know, get, get more serious about uh, sustainability, and really how do we try to move beyond, just the very incremental uh, work that was done back then, and going, I mean, eventually we'll get also to the book, is unfortunately still very much of the current approach. But the idea was really to for me, it was about really understanding how the it was using, thinking about design as a new dimension, new lenses, right, that I use, and they could help me, almost like, some sort of a superpower in my work, and thinking about what I do.
Well, you'll be happy to know that I was once also an economics major until I found design. So I'm wondering how and when you started to embrace like design thinking in your work, because it sounded like you were really on that business track for a long time.
Right. And part of it was the work as an entrepreneur. And
Mm.
there it was very much, about getting then it was more, thinking about, the matters, think that the importance of, of design in terms of the how do we create solutions that people actually are interested in,
Mm.
right? How do we make sure that we are uh, getting to that right sweet spot in terms of desirability, feasibility, and viability. This was also about learning, some of the qualities of taking a more iterative approach, that was, also in terms of just getting to understand what does it mean to fail and so forth. And eventually, it also led me to really to think about more deeply about the need in a more human-centered approach, right? And what a more human-centered design, along with taking a more eco-creative approach, could lead into. I started in a way from really a more, and that goes to my education from a more commercial perspective, right? How do we use design again to create better products? And I slowly but surely shifted to think about how do we create design to basically to improve our well-being, to ensure
Mhm.
that we have a future.
Yeah, it sounds like you went on a pretty big evolution then. It seems like that's the best. You didn't say you had like an epiphany, but I believe that you had an evolution. Like you gradually came to where you are now through your work.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for me, Parsons played a big role in it. That the environment, right, that I was part of, uh, was very much about how do we challenge the status quo, right? How do we use design? How do we use creativity to challenge the what is going on around us, to try and look at how do we fix dysfunctional systems that are all around us? How do we think again in deeper ways and recognize that it's not just about design, is not just about creating beautiful products or better services, but also about issues of social justice and equity and so forth. That, for me, part of my trajectory was also, it led me to really to focus on the sharing economy. For many years,
Yeah.
this was my focus of my research and work, and the idea was the this thinking at least 5 6 years ago that this could be a vision for a better future, right? This could be a pathway to think about, okay, well, what the sustainable future could actually look like. And it was very excited to think about, okay, here's a great way for us to envision a way to move forward, in and not just thinking on the commercial perspective, right? And opportunities, but also how do we do it in a way that is better for the environment and to society.
Well, you wrote a book, and I have not read your book. I'm waiting it for it to arrive on my doorstep. So one day I'll be able to read that. I also wrote a book, and I'm not sure why I did, but I'm wondering what brought you to write your book, and maybe you can share with us what your book is about.
Definitely. So the I mean, I was talking about sharing economy. For me, it was eventually a big disappointment, and it was eventually just about, again, how do we create better services? But it turned out to be very exploitative and not the rosy future that I had and many others in mind.
It's
And
true.
so
Yeah.
that frustration, I think, for me was also, in not just in terms of specifically the sharing economy, but it started to be very much about how sustainability is applied in businesses, and how overall what's the approach that the business world, right, with its power, with its ability to make a difference, right, how it approaches its own environmental and social impact. And in around 2018 or so, with the growing understanding of the urgency of the climate crisis, I started, focusing more and more and on the challenges, right, on the context of the climate crisis. And it became to me very clear, right, that there's a growing gap between what this crisis tells us, right, what it shows us that we need to do, and how, especially business is what is business is doing. So uh, that frustration eventually led me to say, okay, I need to sit down and I want to lay out what I think that the problem is, and how do we approach it? How do we move away from what I see,
Mhm.
right? What an alternative could look like, and how do we make it work? And that led me eventually to sit down and write the book, Rethinking Corporate Sustainability in the Era of Climate Crisis, a strategic design approach.
Yeah, that title really interested me, and the big reason why I asked you to come on was this, and a little bit of a selfish reason, but also I think it's useful for people who are listening to this, because I've always wondered, um, as you're teaching, as you're in the classroom, sustainability as a theory, you can put it into practice. And then the big question is, how do you actually go and do this in the world, right? You graduate as a student and you're interested in this. And I've heard so many students tell me this, that now what do I do? Like, what if the place I work doesn't embrace these values? And gosh, how do you address that? That's a tough one. And I'm always curious about what other people say about it. Does this come up for you at all? And I'm sure you're a little bit more well versed in it than I am. So
No, I mean, first I have to say I was also selfish. I mean, in a way, I teach a course in our graduate program in strategic design management that is called Sustainable Business Models. And for me,
Mhm.
it was this is the book that I never had, right?
Right.
So I wrote a book that could be, also valuable, and could be used in this course as well as in others. But for me, it was really that one small incentive. Yeah, I mean, in a way, I mean, this book, in a sense, is an academic book, but
Mhm.
I also try to make it accessible, right? I saw it really as a way. Thought about my work as building a bridge between a couple of bridges there. One bridge is between really the more academic theory background and practicality. And the other bridge is really between radical thinking and again more the practicality, or the messiness, right, of the day-to-day work that practitioners have to deal with. So trying really to make sure that I have the tension right between these elements in mind, and I hope that eventually has generated a book that could be helpful on both ends of the spectrum, the academic and the practical. However, I would say, as I see it also with sometimes with on our end, right? We always rush to the solution, right? And we want it really to make it easy and make it digestible, right? Give me the five hows, right? How, what do I do? What do I do tomorrow, right? What do I what can I do? This is important, but what I
Mhm.
try, I think, and that's part again, I think that's also, I mean, the part of the taking a strategic design approach. You need to lay out the foundations. If you
Mhm.
don't have the right foundations, the five hows that that you may end up with, will be meaningless.
Can you go into more detail about these five hows?
So you want to jump to the end. So I mean, one thing.
I'm giving away maybe it's a spoiler alert for your book, right? You have to read my book to get.
Yeah,
to
no,
find out.
I mean, so I'll just give maybe two sentences
Sure.
to give the some context. I mean, one thing that I talk about is really about in the first part of the book is about what I call sustainability as usual, how businesses have adopted sustainability. It became a norm, but it's still very much grounded in shareholder capitalism. It's still very much grounded in first and foremost profit maximization.
Right.
And so and that evolves, I think, and I share how it is reflected in, for example, circular economy, which is also, a very, everyone likes the circular economy because it's
Yeah.
kind of a win-win. But what I try to show it's that there's also the danger there that we're taking it to a very incremental place if we come with a mindset, right, with the mental model of sustainability as usual. And what I talk about in the second part of the book is really about an alternative vision that I present that I call awakened sustainability, which is really about putting sustainability first and changing the power dynamics between sustainability and profit maximization. And so this is all great, but the question is, how do we get there? And part of what I present is a theory of change, right? And I won't get into all the complexities of it, but it goes really to the question of how do we change the mindset, the mental model in business. And that brings me to thinking about the stories, right? And
Yeah.
in a way, narratives, in a way it's great because it kind of, I mean, talking about circular economy, right, it closes the loop because I start a book by saying that what I actually want is to write a new story,
Mhm.
right? Because I mean, when you think about it, I mean, and I this is again, I'm stealing from another Israeli scholar here, in this case Yuval Noah Harari, who is talking in his book *Sapiens*, right, about the fact that that companies are nothing but the story, and
Mhm.
and if you think about it, right, or as you call it, right, it's basically it's imagined reality. So much of everything around us is imagined reality. It's just a
Yeah.
story, right? Money is a story. Religion is a story. Capitalism is a story. Design is a story, right? So, in a sense, right, we also developed within the story of companies. We developed a story of sustainability in business. And what I am trying in this book is basically to tell a new story, right? And
Mhm.
and to try to really to make it compelling enough so we could eventually, hopefully, it will could lead to really to becoming a more dominant story, and hopefully one that could help us move to a more desired future. So that's just the context. I hope it it wasn't too long, but
No, I like that. Let's tell a new story, right? I
yeah.
like that idea, the sustainability story, and it's not the same as the old one, right? Well, let's take a quick break here for some commercial messages, and when we come back, we'll talk more about these sustainability narratives for business and what you think is missing from design education in this climate crisis.
Most of us know what we need to do to help the planet, like more solar, trees, and more bicycles. But even the best of us can get pretty stuck with figuring out how we motivate and inspire millions of people and governments around the world to adopt change. But there is a way. My name is Katie Patrick. I'm an environmental engineer, a designer, and an author, and I interview expert PhD researchers from top universities around the world like MIT, Harvard, and Stanford about the psychology of environmental action. And I put these interviews out on my podcast called How to Save the World. I'm inviting you to join me on this wild intellectual journey into the heart of the environmental psyche so that we can unearth these fascinating and critical teachings we can use in our climate campaigns, programs, designs, and startups. You can find my podcast, How to Save the World, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, and at anchor.fm/Katie Patrick.
So, Raz, you write and teach about sustainability narratives for business. And I read your, I guess it's rather recent Medium article about this. And you mentioned this term, narratives. And it ties back into what you just said. It's about a story. Everything's a story. So can you elaborate more on the idea of what you call this narrative war and narrative warriors from this Medium article, and maybe give us an example of each?
Right. And the point that I'm trying to make is, again, in that when we think about, right, how do we change a mental model, right? This brings us to stories. And this is, the thinking that eventually, stories shape our mental models, which eventually shape, how we see the world and how we act on it, right? So the point that I'm trying to make is that to win the battle for climate change, you need first to win the battle of narratives, and just look around you. The narrative war is basically on everything around you, right?
It is.
COVID, vaccinations, climate change. It's of course, in politics, but everything, right? There are narratives that are fighting against one another, trying to basically to claim dominance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to ensure that, right, they are that they're shaping how people think about everything that they see and eventually do. And so what I'm saying that this is, I mean, when it comes to climate, there is no, I mean, it is basically the same. So the one thing is to recognize that we're in a narrative war, and to ask ourselves, right, how do we create new narratives that are meaningful, that are empowering, that are really centered around well-being, and also, trying to ensure that they create impact in the present, not just in the future. And so, and I talk more in this article, but also, I mean, in the book, about the need to to think about how to apply these narratives, right, and to try to push them further, to allow them to, again, assume dominance. So maybe I can give one example.
Yeah.
Maybe I mean, I'll start with just the more general example. I mean, I think that, for example, the Green New Deal is a great example of a new narrative, right? Because it tries to reframe the fight over climate change in terms of good jobs and a livable future. I mean, these are two things that we can all relate to. These are two things that are meaningful for everyone. They're empowering. They help make sense, and they're also they're bringing not just the urgency, but also provide you with agency, and
Mm-hmm.
that's critical. Now, in maybe in more business terms, right? I think about the notion, right, of maybe I'll give two examples. So one is thinking about overconsumption, right? When right now, right, there's the more dominant narrative is perhaps that overconsumption is not necessarily a problem, but it's just an integral part of a legitimate business model, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is why we have fast fashion, right? Or this is why we have companies that apply planned obsolescence and sell us a new iPhone every year, and so forth, right? And a new narrative that I would like to see, taking place is one that is actually considering overconsumption as a serious societal problem with dire consequences for humanity. Right? That's a very different approach. So in a way, the fight is right. How do I take the current narrative that right now it's the more mainstream narrative, and I make it weaker? How do I invalidate this narrative, right? And I push a different narrative that is really first and foremost about being aligned with ecological boundaries and societal foundations, right? And I think that that's critical. We need to redesign, right, businesses in accordance with ecological boundaries and societal foundations, right? To make sure that we're in the right direction. But that requires us to start telling different stories, right, that are aligned with this approach.
Do you find in your own personal just research or just reading the news, do you see that transition happening with businesses, as you said, changing their stories within the boundaries of our ecological systems, or not?
Yeah, I mean, I see. So there are these, there are some examples of what I call narrative warriors, right? And I think that narrative warriors could be individuals, right, that have a role to play. For example, some people that are what I call norm. I mean, it's not my term, but I use it. Norm entrepreneurs, right? People that are challenging current social norms and are trying to push for new norms. And you can see it, for example, with people that are challenging, our thinking about the fashion industry, or our thinking about sustainability consulting, or about sustainable investing. Really trying to bring some honesty and rigor to the conversation, and they are changing the conversation. From a company's point of view, I would say that um, I like the work, for example, of Salesforce, and that is trying really to become what I call to apply an approach that is amplifying innovation. What it means is basically that you don't think what happens within your four walls, but you're trying to amplify your influence beyond that. So they are working, for example, to make sure that all of their suppliers are adopting a science-based target, meaning that they're committing to reduce their carbon emissions in accordance with the Paris Agreement goals, right? So that they're, this is not about, just, hey, could you please do it? But this is about having they're adding a new clause to the contracts that they sign on, basically saying, you have to do it, or otherwise you'll be fined. And that's a very different approach. But
yeah, definitely, especially in
yeah,
the US, right?
totally. But it's also, I would say, one of the things that I talk about in the book is that changes will happen. I mean, some of the key levers are external to companies, right? And I think that this goes back to the dark matter, right? Regulation, policymaking is part of it. And for example, only this week, the French government announced that starting in January 2022, it's going to ban plastic packaging in vegetables and fruits.
Wow.
Yeah. And
I didn't read that. That's good news.
It is. And that's a game changer, right? And I think that, again, it changes the environment now, right? There are new constraints that you need to work with, right? To redesign the, basically supermarkets and food retailers and so forth, right? So one thing, in a way, right, that it goes to what Bucky Fuller was talking about, decades ago, right? That it's easier, to don't focus on changing the person, change the environment in which that person operates
Yeah,
to help that change happen.
I totally agree with that. And the packaging, I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, I worked in packaging for a couple years, and it was an international company, and they had to it was cheaper for them to design one package for every country, not just a country gets its own packaging. So I'm hoping that French law and maybe future EU laws there will impact here in the US, because the US companies that want to sell there, they have to abide by those laws, and they'll just change because the system is what it is there. The system will change here. That's my hope. I've always hoped for that. So
Right. And
uh,
and if I may, so I'll give you the exact opposite, right? Which I think is one of my favorite examples for sustainability as usual. So Heinz came came up earlier this year with this very exciting announcement that they actually uh, they succeeded in making their ketchup bottle cap recyclable, which apparently was a big issue. And they said that it was the result of an 8-year effort that they put 185,000 hours of work into it, and it was only an announcement. And I thought to myself, this is crazy, because yes, it could help potentially prevent 1 billion caps from eventually reaching landfill. But again, we're not asking the right question. The
yeah,
question is not how do we make sure that these caps won't get to the landfill, but maybe we need to ask why do we need single-use bottles in the first place?
exactly right. So that's actually a good transition for my last couple of questions for you. That's a design problem, right? And so I'm wondering what your vision is for design education, and because we're in a climate crisis, we're in a number of other crises too. What's your vision for design education, and what's missing right now to get there?
Yeah, I think that it's a great question, and I think about it often. I think that designers could be a very powerful force, and could be really, a key driver of the changes that we want to see. But in order to do that, I think we need to see a change on many levels. One of them is on the educational level. I would like to see the key, or the key issues that are related to the climate crisis. I want to see them embedded in our education system, and that actually goes beyond just design school. I think that should start with the K to 12 system. But speaking on my own backyard, right, I would like to see a design for climate, or design for climate crisis. I think also the language here should be more clear. Design for climate crisis course that will be part of the curriculum of every first year undergraduate student, just to make sure that we bring in, and I think it's important to bring in again that holistic approach that looks about not just how do we think about the environmental challenges, but also how do we think about the societal consequences. How do we bring equity and social justice and inclusion into the conversation? And then I would like to see it also something that we push to see in terms of projects, in terms of portfolios, in terms of the work that we already just, I mean, to give you maybe a small example, right? In that course that I'm teaching, sustainable business models, right? One of the one of the we have a course project, and one of the criteria that we added was really for the students to think not just how they develop a sustainable business model, but how they develop a sustainable business model that goes beyond sustainability as usual. And that, in a way, it creates a very different brief. And I want to see, again, that level of change integrated in every course. I mean, in every type of work that we do.
You got me really excited there because my program that I'm in at my university is rethinking our undergraduate. We do this seemingly every 5-6 years, which is good. It's a living document, right? Our undergraduate curriculum, and they're looking for some proposals before we meet. And I was thinking, I'm going to write a proposal for a design in the climate crisis course. And now I have backup, right? I can say, well, Raz has it too, and he's over, he's going to do it. So he'll be my support system here to help.
and I hope, that is also going to be, again, part of the, a more collaborative effort. I think that we need also the design community overall. I mean, in terms of the, where the energy goes to, right? That's always a question. And I think that needs to be also seen in conferences, in journals, in projects that we do with communities and so forth. I think that this should be an effort across stakeholders and universities
everywhere. So if you're listening to this show and you are thinking about your undergraduate and graduate curriculum, let's talk more about this. Let's get this going at every university, not just a handful.
Right.
So the last question I have for you, Raz, is one I ask everyone, is if you were asked to teach your dream course, maybe it is designing in the climate crisis course, but I'm interested to know what would your dream course be, and how would you structure it? What would it be?
Yeah, my dream course. I would like to actually, my dream course is about taking a course that already doing it in different environments, right? My dream course would be to take, for example, one of my favorite courses is sustainable business models, how to design sustainable business models. But my dream is always about, bringing it to new environments. I want to teach it. I want to teach it in refugee camps. I want to teach it in, in community centers. I want to teach it in an environment where, we can, connect students with a very different environment from the one that they know. And I think that, that, level of challenge would be very different when you have that sort of, a new environment injected into it. So for me, again, beyond what I talked about, the design for the climate crisis, which is also one thing that I'm passionate about, just, think about, again, I'll also end with the dark matter, right? Mm-hmm. If the course itself is the matter, I'm thinking about how do I redesign the dark matter.
What a fantastic answer. I love that. Taking it to an audience that doesn't have the access that you and I have to this information. Fantastic. Thank you, Raz. We're out of time. It was a great conversation. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Before we leave, tell us the name of your book again and where we can find you online.
Thank you. So the name of the book is Rethinking Corporate Sustainability in the Era of Climate Crisis. And you can follow me on Medium, where I publish an article about every month or so. And I'm also very active on LinkedIn and Twitter. So just, look for Godelnik or Raz Godelnik there. And feel free also to reach me there. Look forward to hearing from all of you. And thank you very much, Eric.
Thank you. It's been a great 50 or so minutes. Thanks for tuning in today to Climify. But don't leave just yet. I've got more goodness for you coming up. Music. As the pandemic has really affected our friends in the performing arts, where they're unable to book shows, tour, or sometimes even get into a recording studio, I thought I'd highlight one at the end of each of our episodes. Since this is a podcast for designers, the musicians featured on each are also designers. Well, I'll turn it over to our first artist to explain who they are and the reasons behind their music.
Hi, my name is Tim Lillis. I've been playing music in some form or another since I was a kid. Most recently, the form has taken beat making. When the pandemic hit, I knew I wanted to have some kind of musical outlet, and I got myself an MPC, which is a sort of a sampler sequencer. I've been enjoying it because even though it's a piece of electronic music equipment, it doesn't require using it with a computer, so I can be kind of untethered, go anywhere. I've been using samples, found sounds, as well as classic drum and other instrument sounds to make beats. They're still evolving, but you can hear what I'm doing at soundcloud.com/Narwhal Street. That's NARWHALSTREET.
Thanks for listening to Climify. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. To catch all the latest on Climify, you can follow us on Instagram at Climify Podcast. Climify is part of Climate Designers. Learn more at climatedesigners.org/edu.